almost sacrilegious. There they are, our baskets from communion on Easter, or Good Friday, that we remember the Lord and bread. And this is actually not a communion thing going. I'm going to ask, I guess, Josh and Greg were going to help me out with this. Now, just before they pass these out, if you should be a chocolate lover, take one egg, and then I'll explain it from there. So guys, come up wherever you are. When we run out of eggs, we'll figure we've hit our quota of chocolate lovers. So they're going to pass out these eggs, and they're going to do it quickly because they're going to move now. There they go. And while they're doing that, I think I'm just going to steal Kathy's water. Now here's the experiment that we're taking. All you chocolate lovers out there, when you get them and we get ready to start the sermon in earnest, I want you to unwrap your candy and pop it in your mouth. Now, depending if you're a master chocolate lover, some folks are really good at making those things last, aren't they? They're just going to kind of let that melt away in your mouth. I see Mark's taking the challenge back there. He's smiling and nodding. So I want you to do that if you're that type. And if you're a Steve Anderson, his question was, well, can I just gobble it down? And I said, yep, if that's the way you eat your chocolate. But I want you to take that. And as we begin, you just go ahead and unwrap that chocolate, and you just kind of pop that in your mouth, and then just kind of follow along as we get going. Here's where we are with Easter this year. Is that, we've done Easter messages that we've put in a lot of research. We've been up here. We've talked about the painful details of the crucifixion. We've talked about the spiritual significance of the resurrection. We've talked about how the evidence that this really has happened, and we've really done a lot of different aspects of dealing with what Easter is all about. Now, as far as that side of it goes, if you have your guide sheets, you'll see on the top there, if you really want to get into that kind of thing, let me just suggest some reading for you for this Easter. Case for Easter, Lee Strobel, wonderful book on the evidence of Easter. If you're looking into the significance of the cross and the tomb, let me suggest The Resurrection of the Son of God by N.T. Wright. And if you're, a big thing that's been kind of going around a school of thought, that there never really was a historical Jesus, and that it was all just kind of a myth or figurative thing. So if you're looking for historical evidence, let me suggest The Historical Jesus by Gary R. Habermas. So there are some things if you want to read in this. But we're taking a different approach to Easter this year. We're not so much proving Easter or explaining Easter. We are going to taste Easter. We're tasting Easter this year. And it's going to bring us to 2 points. There's the chocolate that some of my experts and aficionados out there are now partaking in. And the other thing we are looking at is really this stuff that I'm needing more than chocolate right now, is water. We're looking at the two things. You see, both of them symbolize something in Easter. And Easter is the core of the Christian faith. So Easter, in effect, is symbolizing not just today, but your entire spiritual life. So we have two things of which we can taste. We can taste chocolate, and we can taste water. Okay, let's see how that fits in. Well, in the cultural setting, it's not hard to see that. If you talk about a holiday that deals with tasting, it is Easter. I mean, Easter is all about tasting. You saw the little video on the beginning, and Steve sitting on the Easter Bunny's lap. That was great, Steve. You'll never live that one down, buddy, just to let you know. And all the kids getting painted, but it was all about a candy hunt that was going on there. There's one later on here today. We have a lot of memories. And now, if you're a boomer in particular, you know, like we had that saying, your parents could take you to the woodshed. If you're a boomer, everybody knows what that means. And they might do that all year long, but I'll tell you what, on Easter, there better be one of those hollow bunnies sitting there for you to find when you get up in the morning. It's, if you didn't get chocolate on Easter, it was like tantamount to child abuse. So we build a lot of memories around chocolate on Easter, the candy egg hunts and such. Do you know that this year, just this year, that this country will spend $2.5 billion on chocolate? That's a lot of chocolate. We take our chocolate very seriously, especially on Easter. And I thought this would be fun. I thought, you ever wonder just how crazy do we go? Well, let me give you a quick list of 4 of the most expensive Easter chocolates in the world. Okay, you ready? Well, the economical one comes in at $105. It's the chocolate ostrich egg. It's 2.5 pounds, and you get a lot of chocolate, I guess, for your money. Good chocolate. Number 2 is touted by Forbes magazine as the best gift for billionaires. And it is, behold, the La Madeleine aux Truffes. No, only if you're English. If you're French, you got to say it different. Since it's La Madeleine, I figured you better say truffle. And we're actually talking a French truffle, and they're covered by pure Valrhona dark chocolate at a mere $250. Now, keep in mind, this one weighs about 3 ounces and is the size of a chicken egg. So there's a lot packed in there for $250. Number 3 is the Imperial Spring Flowers egg. It comes from the UK. Some of the world's best chocolate, 12 pounds it is, $347. Everyone should buy one for their child. Number 4 is my capper that I found. It is the diamond-eyed bunny. Now, the diamond-eyed bunny is 14.5 inches tall, 11 pounds of chocolate, and just a mere 600,000 calories. But who counts? The eyes are 1.7 carat diamonds, which can be reset into something else after you eat this bad boy. And it's yours for only $49,000. Yeah, we can take our chocolate pretty seriously, can't we? One of the things that had led to this were, well, 2 things with the idea, the approach, was the idea of how we are about Easter. We taste Easter. But that's scriptural in a way, because we don't have to go even to what we'd call an Easter passage. Way back in Psalms, Psalm 34, verse 8 says, "Taste and see that the Lord is good." Taste and see that the Lord is good. Christianity is all about tasting God. As a matter of fact, even the Old Testament on which Christianity is based is about tasting God. It just comes down to what exactly are we tasting. So as we talk Easter, we have these 2 consumables. We have chocolate, and then I'll get into water in a bit, but let's just consider this for a minute. When the author writes in that original Hebrew, the word would have been ta'am, and it's not too far removed from the way we might use the word. Taste means to literally taste, but how do you taste something else? How do you taste victory? How do you taste pain? You know, anybody who's been through things, in their language, the second definition would be figuratively to perceive. And everyone in here knows you've been through something and you couldn't explain it to someone else who hasn't been through it. There is an experience in the human factor that until we experience something, we really don't know. I could say even chocolate. Imagine going to some tribe that doesn't even eat sweets and trying to explain chocolate. You just taste it and see for yourself. But explaining would be very, very hard. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Well, we certainly taste a lot of chocolate. So, let's just start there in the cultural sense. When we taste chocolate, what's the positive side of that? Well, one, it's very alluring. I noticed when the baskets came out and people found out there was chocolate, I don't see those kind of smiles on a regular communion. It was just kind of everybody kind of lit up there and off they went with the chocolate. So, chocolate is an immediate gratification, right? You pop that in your mouth, and if you're into sweets, your receptors go into action. As the medical people like Paula and Murphy and different people say, yes, and the endorphins are released in the mind. And yeah, of course, there's a whole lot of wonderful things. As a matter of fact, there was an experiment that said that you cannot feel depressed while you are eating something pleasurable. It's kind of interesting is while you were eating it, at that very moment, check your feelings. You'll find that at least for that instant, you're feeling pretty good. The brain just says, this is good. It's very tangible. There's no faith. I've said things up here I have been saying for a long time. It takes faith and wrestling with your conscience and your mental faculties, but this was none of that. The chocolate popped in your mouth, that was great. Anybody understands immediately the tangible thing and the pleasant experience. Yeah, it is a pleasant experience, very alluring, very attractive, feels really good for the moment. This is where that experiment we were talking about comes in here. I'll start with this as one of the first negative. We talked the positive things. There are positive things about eating chocolate. But let's look at some of the negative. Well, I want to start with the obvious, is that everybody in here who took part just consumed roughly 15 calories. They ate 39% fat, 58% carbs, and 4% protein. And if they wanted to walk that off, it would take 15 minutes at no less than 4 miles per hour of speed. And if you're over 70, it gets worse. It's 18 minutes because we all kind of slow down our metabolism as we get older. So I'm sorry for those who don't walk. I made you all just a little bit fatter. So, you've got that side. How about your teeth? Well, chocolate actually in itself can be not bad, but I can guarantee you there is one big load of sugar in those chocolate eggs that I passed out. And we know that gets turned into acid. The acid will rot your teeth if you eat too much of it. Us boomers know all about that. We've got just fillings like out to here. How about body in general? How about general health? Here's an interesting thing, a summary on eating a high sugar diet, a high sugar-rich diet. If you do, these are the overall net effect. Higher risk of weight gain, obviously, heart disease, acne, diabetes, cancer, depression, accelerated skin aging, cellular aging, drained energy, liver disease, kidney risk, gout, and accelerated mental decline. Wow, that's a lot for what's going on, because here's where the experiment comes in. Is there, by any chance, anyone who was a chocolate aficionado out there, anybody still have the chocolate in their mouth? Wow, not one. And I bet you there were some masters in here. It just doesn't last that long. Think about this. That was a pleasurable thing, was it not? And before I can even finish talking about the chocolate, you no longer have the one you had. It's melted away. It's not there. Chances are that for most of you, you don't even have the aftertaste of the chocolate. So what happens? Well, if you really like chocolate, there's that empty feeling, and now you just want another one. And of course, if you eat enough of them, you end up with all those problems we talked about. The lasting effect is so short. So short. Bottom line is this. That Easter candy, it's very alluring. It's very attractive. But it's a fleeting pleasure. Great for just the moment, but the ultimate outcome of it can be very negative. In fact, if you were to get out of hand with this, it would destroy you. It can destroy you mentally and physically. Wow. I think you can see where this is going, is that here we are. This is the big thing we put on the holy day of the resurrection in the world in general. And in fact, there are some folks out there who have nothing to taste on this day than the chocolate. And they have nothing to offer their children but the chocolate. Taste and see. And you know, it doesn't stop, because in churches we can be that way. Every egg I gave was in a nice, colorful wrapper. I bet you I could, even if I want to pay a few extra dollars, go to the one of the Christian stores and get like a Bible verse on the egg, and as you're unwrapping it and you're reading the Bible verse. And what do you end up? You end up with chocolate in religious wrapping. Isn't it wonderful that churches never just have chocolate in religious wrapping? Isn't it wonderful that there are no Christians out there who, maybe some of them even come Sunday after Sunday, and all they are really tasting is chocolate in religious wrapping? Yeah, that's the way it works. But well, what's this thing about water? Where am I going with that? Water is something else you can taste. And this was kind of fun when we were recollecting in the first service. I said, can you think of some time you really loved tasting the water you drank? You live in Indiana, my goodness, in the summer when it's 300 degrees and you just mowed your lawn, cold water tastes pretty good, doesn't it? I think there's a time that I tasted water, and it's like 40 years ago, and I still remember this in a positive way. That's some good tasting water, right? And the way it worked, it was this. It was in the springtime, and I was in northern Canada going to some, where my father's camps used to be, and there were gulches or valleys in between these very large rolling hills. They were basically mountain runoff water. And the snow was just melting, so this water, where this creek where we used to get our spring water, tasted like melting snow. But what was even better is it poured through, wove its way through this large stand of cedar trees, and so it went over the roots of the cedar trees, and the water tasted just above freezing, like melted snow with just a hint of cedar in it. And man, was it good. Was it good? There's some times when you want water that nothing else will do, will it? I mean, just think about this, is that, boy, we love our chocolate, but how long could a person live without chocolate? Now, I know some of you out there saying not very long, but we know that physically we could. How long can you live without water? Not long, huh? I think science says now, depending on your situation in health, 2 days to 1 week. Can't last long without the water. Here's the other verse that came to mind. When we're talking about tasting Easter, there were 2 verses to me that came to mind. The first was, taste and see that the Lord is good. That's the primary command in Christianity. If we're not tasting the Lord, then we're really not experiencing Christianity. Second one is a story from the New Testament that probably everyone who goes to church at all knows, and that's the story of the woman at the well, the Samaritan woman at the well. Let me read you just a touch of that story, and we're going to start here. The Samaritan woman said to him, and that's, of course, she's in a conversation with Jesus, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? For Jews do not associate with Samaritans." And Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God, and who it is that asked you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." Yeah, we're not just talking about this, we're talking about living water. Now, here's the thing we tend to skip. I don't think I've ever heard a sermon that came back onto the mind of that woman in this way. As Samaritans were just another version, really, of Jewish people. They just, a different history path that went on there. So they were like the Jewish people. When you used a term, if it was a biblical term, they would have texts and concepts coming to mind, just bang, 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 and they talked almost in a Bible code. And when Jesus said living water, that was no new term. That term went back into the Old Testament big time, and chances are a lot of these concepts and impressions and verses were popping through that woman's mind as she heard what he said. Verses like this, of course, Isaiah being a core book of the Jews and of Jesus' time. Isaiah 44:3, starting there. For I will pour water on this thirsty land and streams on the dry ground. I will pour out my spirit on your offspring and my blessing on your descendants. They will spring up like grass in a meadow, like poplar trees by flowing streams. Isaiah 55:1. Come, all you who are thirsty, come to the waters, and you who have no money, come buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk without money and without cost. Why spend money on what is not bread, and your labor on what does not satisfy? Listen to me and eat what is good, and you will delight in the riches of fare. Give ear and come to me. Listen that you may live. I will make an everlasting covenant with you. Zechariah 14:8. On that day, living water will flow out from Jerusalem, half of it to the Dead Sea, half of it to the west, to the Mediterranean Sea. In summer and in winter, the Lord will be king over the whole earth. On that day, there will be one Lord, and his name the only name. And there were words of warning and judgment as well that went with this living water. Jeremiah 2:13, my people have committed two sins. They have forsaken me, the spring of living water, and have dug their own cisterns, broken cisterns that cannot hold water. Lord, you are the hope of Israel. All who forsake you will be put to shame. Those who turn away from you will be written in the dust, because they have forsaken the Lord, the spring of living water. If you're following on your guide sheets in there, look how many operative phrases are underlined and highlighted in there. How many times God puts promise that these things happen in the good sense when you're tasting the living water. These things happen if you're not tasting the living water. Living water becomes very important. The New Testament just bases on it. Consider this. If you wanted a balanced view of what Christianity is, a balanced view of it, you could get everything about the New Testament just by reading the Old Testament. And if that doesn't blow your mind, you could take this one phrase, living water, and if you looked into that and you understood every term, every concept that went along with that, you would understand from that one term of the Old Testament everything that happens in the New Testament. Living water is the Spirit of God. Living water brings life to dry ground, which of course means dry lives. It blesses your offspring. It causes growth. It is free when you're destitute. It is the richest thing you can possibly have. It's an everlasting covenant. It flows over the whole earth in the name of the only God. It is a warning that the best of us are broken vessels, and we in ourselves cannot contain this living water by ourselves. Those who do not go to God for it will be put to shame. Those who forsake the God of living water will end up with their names in the dust. And if we add the clarity of the New Testament, living water will flow from within. It will ultimately wipe away every tear. It will direct our minds. It will be the only light we need in the end of time. There's a lot of powerful things that go along with this that looks so plain, but brings life. It brings life. So here we are on this day. We talk about the resurrected Jesus. We talk about Easter, and everybody is tasting something. In the literal and in the figurative way that we've been talking. Some of us out there have nothing but chocolate. Some churches are made of nothing but chocolate. Some people who even go in those churches have lives that taste nothing but chocolate. But this is what God relates himself to. Springs of living water. Kind of leads us to a question on a holy day like today. What are you tasting? What are you tasting? The invitation was nothing new. It went out from King David at an amazing time when he was under a lot of duress, a lot of pressure just to survive. And in all of that pressure, in all that trouble, in all that danger to his life, he wrote Psalm 34. Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who takes refuge in him. Oh, fear the Lord, you his saints. For those who fear him have no lack. Come, O children, listen to me. I will teach you the fear of the Lord. What man is there who desires life and loves many days, that he may see good? The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers out of them all. And then here's some interesting verses. He keeps all his bones. Not one of them is broken. Isn't it amazing as we look at a psalm that deals with tasting what is maybe the greatest tasting holy day we have, and right in the middle of it is a prophecy of the one whom we are tasting. The Lord redeems the life of his servants. None of those who take refuge in him will be condemned. Not just today, but in the very broader sense, in every way that's implied here. Today, what are you tasting? Today, in your life, what are you tasting? Is it all chocolate? Or is it living water? It's living water. Your children, as you go from this place, what are they tasting? What have you given them to taste? The chocolate? Chocolate only. Or the living water? The living water. The living water, it is told, flows from within. I asked the first service, I said, well, tell me, if somebody came in here and they were completely didn't know anything about the Bible, and this term comes up, how would you explain living water? Maybe take a moment in your mind. Somebody has no idea, how would you explain this term, living water? And give it to Elder Steve. He, I think, came up with the best definition. He simply said, every life-giving aspect of God. And that pretty well sums it up. Every life-giving aspect of God. But if it's water that flows from within, that implies something, because it starts inside, but then it flows somewhere. and it flows outside. See, not only are you tasting something in life, your life is a taste to other people, to your children, to your neighbors, to your friends, your coworkers. What are they tasting from your life? Is it all chocolate? Or do they sense maybe the living water in there? That would be my prayer this morning, that as we taste, nobody settles for anything less than the living water.